Good afternoon, evening, morning, and any other time that I haven't mentioned. Welcome back to the Identity Human podcast with Don and
Ray.
Just that now.
Well, if I say Ray Almond, you get.
I know. I keep waiting. We could keep everyone guessing. So, I did want to do a little throwback. So, if you guys were like some of you have started to listen from the beginning episodes, and the feedback I got was like, "Love your intro. Hope that never changes." And if you're now getting to episode 52 or 53, 54, whichever one this one is, I think it'll be 53. Then I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that we changed that first intro.
What, when you used to whistle?
No, actually, it was before that I used to go a random beatbox. Remember? Or do you not remember? Oh, because you wouldn't have been joined then. No. Oh, you didn't listen? Did you not listen to them?
I listened to some of them. Wow. I just do not remember your random beatboxing. I remember Miles' beatboxing.
So Miles' beatboxing, I think, is now the intro.
Yes.
Whereas I used to do like, I can't even remember. No, I'm not even
going You've lost a rhythm.
A random noise, and then be like, welcome to the Identity Human podcast. So, and I was like,
people have commented on that.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, because it's unproduced, it's raw, it's authentic, and now we're going to insert an ad from our sponsor. I'm just joking. We don't have a sponsor. Okay, I'm rambling on. Sorry. Yep. Welcome back, everyone, and we're looking forward to chatting to you guys tonight again. And it is just me and Ray and me.
Ray and I.
No. So I knew I was going to pick you up on that because we always do. And someone actually told me the difference is how do you know whether it's I or me?
You should be able to say a complete sentence without the other person's
Exactly.
name.
So if I said it's just me or if I said it's just I.
Oh, yeah. I can see what you're saying.
Interesting, isn't it? And that was like, tell me something you only learned when you were 35 or whatever it was.
So you should be able to say the complete sentence without the other person's name and it should make sense.
Yeah. And now that's introduced our new niche of how to speak English properly. I'm joking. All right. So what are we actually going to talk about tonight? And it is, so we actually went back and forth on a few things. And it really excited me that Ray was like, let's talk about goal setting. And I was like, ooh, okay, let's see. Because it's
been a contentious point.
Yeah. And
over the years.
I think it's probably a good symbolism of like where I've started to appreciate the way you would have done it and you appreciate the way I've done it. But we also know that it was one of those classic things of you're not right, but I'm not right. And you're not wrong, but I'm not wrong. And we need to find what that midpoint is and what works best.
And it wasn't a problem when we had like broad ways of setting like goals. And then when I was growing my own business and Don was growing his own business, we each had our way of setting goals.
Yeah.
But when we, about a year and a half ago, started to sit down and have a monthly laugh dinner, which I don't know if you've heard us talk about that on an episode before. It's where Don and I sit down once a month and we literally do a goal setting session review, see how we're performing against our goals personally, business, like all aspects of life, like what are our plans for holidays, what are our plans for personal development, and just making sure we're on the same page. And so when we started to do this, our different approaches for how we like to set goals became
our first learning point, of like how different we actually talked and thought, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Even though I always thought we knew that we thought differently, but we couldn't identify it. It was just there, but you couldn't see it. That's like self-awareness, isn't it? Like you think you're self-aware right now, but let me tell you something. You're going to pick up things about yourself in 6 months' time that you couldn't see now, as are we. And that's the fascinating thing about like self-growth and journey and communication. Anyway, so do you want to start off like where we...
I can talk about where I got with my goal setting and then maybe...
Well, no, do you want to give them context as to like where we started? Or do you want to start with how you would set goals?
No, I want to say where I can give context to how I started and how I...
Okay, you go for it.
Ended up with the goal setting approach that I was using a year and a half ago. And then we can talk about...
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we got to. So...
We don't pre-plan this stuff, by the way.
You can see we're planning in episode, within the episode.
Go with the flow.
So basically, I mean, I think it's the goal setting approach that so many of us have been taught. It covers my face. I'm never sure what to do then. So Don's moved my microphone, but then my whole face, I was like behind the microphone. Okay, if you're watching the video, you'll understand. If not, let's
Sorry.
move on. So, goal setting, it's something that you probably almost certainly sometime at school or university were taught a little goal setting session, and almost certainly you were taught something about, like, maybe they taught you the acronym SMART, which is what, I don't even know what it all stands for, but like measurable, specific, etc.
Measurable, yeah.
Okay. And that was something that I was taught, and as like an accountant and very, like, I don't know, you could say right brain, analytical, numbers-based person, I really lent into. And I then experienced over the years of, like, I remember my early adulthood years, like, I always thought, well, if I set a big goal, like, okay, I'm going to gym 5 times a week. The moment within a week or two, when
that's your example of a big goal.
No, it's what it was. Like to say,
okay, go for it.
Later, the moment, you see, when you hear Don's strategy, you'll see what he means. But I thought, well, if I said something that's like unrealistic, well, that's quite like big, 5 days a week or 6 days a week. I'm going to gym 5 or 6 days a week. And then I would do it for a week or two and very quickly fall off the bandwagon. Where what I found, and I suppose this leans into your minimum maximum principle, but what I found is, like, no, if I rather set the goal of I'm going to gym twice a week or exercise twice a week, and I do that no matter what, that became a lot more sustainable. So I thought, you know what, there's a lot of power in this idea of setting achievable goals. So I then kind of let that roll over into when I was growing my business. I was like, right, I'm going to set a goal that it's going to stretch me, but I can very much see me hitting it. And so that I'm always stretching myself, and I know, make sure that I'm heading in the right direction. And it brought me a certain amount of success in business.
I wish you'd made it just a bit bigger, because then you would have achieved that like 2 years ago.
And I'd always be like, wow, I would still find it amazing.
There was ambition. Sorry, I like the goals you set.
I would still find it amazing how I would. One key thing I would say, whatever goal setting strategy you decide on, once you've heard Don's side of the story, one thing that I highly, highly recommend you do, if it's one thing you take away from this episode, is to actually write your goals down somewhere, whether it's on a piece of paper or in a piece of software on your computer. And somewhere where you're going to remember where they are and go back and look, because it's so crazy how the person you were 3 years ago, you totally forget where your mindset was at. And I look at stuff that I remember writing down as goals and thinking, I'm going to write this down, but I can't picture, I don't see how I'm ever going to achieve that. And I now look and I'm like, I'm living that reality. And it's so crazy. If I hadn't written that down, I wouldn't have realized the massive gap that I've covered. And so I think no matter what goal strategy you take, just write it down and you'll be amazed when you look back in years to come. But yeah, that's was my approach. And so when Don and I then sat down a year and a half later and we right, let's map out our goals and let's actually put down some numbers for the next few years. And Don just started to throw some crazy numbers there. And I was like, I cannot, my brain cannot comprehend. So do you want to explain your point of view?
Well, my point of view is you take that principle that are just set them as, like, they have to be really scary, and just don't worry about it. Don't worry about how it works out. It will just work out, because if you want to achieve that, you will find the way to achieve it. So that was my thing. If you notice with gas, the reason I think gas didn't became the athlete is because I was aiming global takeover. We're going to be a global brand. It's going to have this massive force for good. And then I was like, but we're not making any progress. And I was like, we should probably go to schools and just do talks at schools. I was like, talks at schools, they're not going to get me global branding. So I didn't even try that because it was too small. So in my head, and you'll see how I link the two later. It's like, if it's not big, it doesn't excite me. And that's genuine. Like, I can't set a goal if it's not big, because it does. I'm like, maybe it's almost like I know I can achieve. It's like an arrogance or an ignorance. Like, I know I can achieve that, so why should I try? Or maybe that's scared to try, because then you're going to fail those small ones. But I'm definitely like a big goal setter, and that doesn't always serve you well, especially if probably time
I think
pressures. There's certain
it
things that
can
come in.
serve you
Yeah.
well if you understand the reason why you're setting those big goals, which is what we're going to come to. So I don't think downplay the big goal setting too much
Oh
because
no, I'm
I
not.
think
I'm
it has a
clear.
place.
I'm contextualizing. I think it's one of those where it brings in that principle of not ignorance is bliss, but like blind faith is where blind faith does become bad, as if like you have this like extended curve of commitment. So if you think about it with gas,
Describe extended curve of commitment.
so this like an upward going curve, an upward curving curve.
Okay.
If you have an axis, a y-axis, x-axis graph,
Yeah.
and you start a line at the bottom in the corner,
Yeah.
and it slowly starts to go up, but then it just keeps going up in a curve,
Like a hockey stick.
like a hockey stick, right?
Yes.
And you're committed, but then your commitment starts to like skyrocket because you so desperately want to make your goal work, but it's blind faith because when does that become too much? And that's why that hockey stick analogy works. So if you think with gaming athletes, if we hadn't stopped at the level we had with like funding, it was like, oh, let's sell the car, let's do this. So there's like, you start to overcommit to things because you've got blind faith, and the whole time you don't realize that actually the bigger goal is great, but what are you trying to achieve in the short term to get there? And that's what I didn't have.
Like the stepping stones between.
Yeah, I mean, I say we didn't have that.
You don't need to know every single stepping stone you're going to take to get that big goal, but you at least need to be clear on how you're going to make the next few steps.
Yeah, and I think I also do downplay the fact that we did try and do it during COVID or on the other side of, and there was a big thing there that we didn't consider. Anyway, that's probably for another episode. So come into the goal setting date that we had. Do you want to carry on the story?
Well, no, I'm happy for you to take over. When you say our goal setting, so our monthly life dinners where we then sat down and let's just take, I can't remember the exact figures. I was like, right, this business that we're starting up this new business, and in 12 months time, it would be great if it had a monthly turnover, like a revenue of £10,000. And I can see that happening. That's a good realistic goal. Let's put it down. It's going to be tricky to achieve. It's going to stretch us, but let's put that down. And Don's like, no, we should be aiming for £1 million turnover. And I'm like, what? In what world? Like what? How? Tell me how we are going to achieve that.
And I was like, it doesn't matter how, we're just going to do it.
And since then, we've obviously had a lot more conversations about this, done some reading, listened to some podcast episodes ourselves, like we're avid podcast listeners.
Well, I'm a book listener.
You're a book. I do lots of podcast listening. And actually realized that there's a really, really important place for those like massive goals that you can set yourself. Because, do you want to explain?
Well, from my point of view, no, you can carry on because I can always add on. Yeah, you go.
It's because of who you have to be to achieve those goals.
Oh, yeah.
And it's those big goals are there to be like, because you have to, if you want to be that £1 million turnover business owner, you have to change. It's not just the business. And I think a lot, and let's just say, if we're talking business, because this Identity Human podcast is very business focused. One of my biggest lessons in the last couple of years.
Well, people within the business. To help you with your business.
Yes. One of my biggest lessons in the past couple of years has been this idea that you always hear when you get into business, you always hear, don't work too much in the business. You must work on your business. You've heard me say this. So people are always like, don't work in your business, work on your business. But I think there's even another layer to that. I think people get so caught working in or on their business that they forget to work on themselves. And I think that's where true like exponential growth happens, and where you see these massive shifts in your life is where you're working on yourself, on the business, then hopefully not getting stuck too much working in the business if you're the business owner. And so I think that's where the bigger goal setting really comes in, because if you are just focusing and making those decisions from the business owner that wants to just, increase your revenue by 20% or 50% or hit that £10,000 monthly revenue mark, you're going to be thinking smaller. You're not going to think beyond that. Whereas that £1 million turnover goal is really going to enable you to think, who do I need to be for that goal to be achieved? So it can be applied to non-business context too.
Yeah, of course it can. I mean, I think where I was going to go to subsidize, add on to what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a something.
There's a word, and now you've got me off the wrong track here.
And it's just to say that you have to have an ultimate goal, and then
Yeah.
you can have your performance goals. Because
Okay.
your ultimate goal is the thing that you would never achieve. And why? It's because it's the thing that gets you up and you're driving towards it, that like it gives you that hope and that faith that if you don't, because if you set performance goals and you fail at a performance goal, everything you were aiming for is now done. So what's next? And that's where it's like, oh, I don't know what's next. I'm not really sure. And you start to second guess yourself, and you then your next performance goal, you're like, well, I failed the first one. I'm not really sure if I can get this one. And it becomes that performance goal, that one, that short-term one, becomes like a big thing for you to achieve. But if you have an ultimate goal, the ultimate goal has got to be like, and it's got to be something you really, really, really want to do. Like
It
it's
has
got to
to
be
be,
unique
yeah,
to
there
you.
has to be that genuine
Desire, 10 out of 10 desire. That's like, yes, I really don't think. You have to really question, like, do I really want this ultimate goal? What is that ultimate goal? Like when you think about your future and you think about where you want to be, who you want to be, how you want to be, those things are important for your ultimate goal. And don't don't let where you are now affect where you want to be. So don't judge your future by your present. So that's where, like, if you're setting an ultimate goal, use imagination. Like, you want to do like the grow model type analogy of like, just don't worry about where you are. Let yourself go. Let your, like, brainstorm. If, flying cars are in your future, then put it in there. If it's like, whatever it is, if it's £1 billion, put it in there, because that's how you start to work towards something.
And don't be afraid to write it down.
Yeah.
And I think if you getting, when you sit down to write out your goals, if you're getting massive resistance internally to writing down some of these that just feel frankly completely unachievable, one of the things you can play around with in goal setting is time. And like you can either collapse or expand time. And so I think often you get focused on that big amazing house or those big holidays or the amount you want to earn. So you get focused on the monetary value, and you think, okay, I would like to make, let's just focus like on the £1 million turnover or £1 million salary, like £1 million take home income, let's say. Okay, that's your goal per year. And most people wouldn't tell you that was their goal because it feels crazy. But if I told you, if you are now working very hard on in a career that has huge growth, or on a business, and I said to you, you look at all this hard work you're doing, do you think you're going to be a millionaire in your lifetime? You're going to be like, damn, yes, I'm going to be a millionaire in my lifetime. I'm not working this hard to not be at that point. And if I said to you, okay, are you going to be a millionaire next year? That probably feels a little bit uncomfortable. So don't get so obsessed with the exact timeline, and extend that time, because you can play around with time and actually extend the time that you are aiming for that goal if it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable, if that helps you to visualize it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think what I'd say, the caveat there is, you're going to have people in the audience going like, that are listening, going like, oh, that's ridiculous. You can't just live without any timelines and measurables and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I would put your performance goals in, so that you know how quick or slow you want to move. And the more realistic they are, that you might be that way inclined. You might need them to feel, it's like that certainty that you need to, like, I know I'm making progress, because there's that balance between the faith and the ultimate goal, and then being blind faith. So if you want to use time, put it into a smart objective only related to a specific short-term goal, because that's going to, sometimes that drives people. But I also feel like if you need those, you probably need to check how badly you want that future goal. And you've got to keep going back to that future ultimate goal, because that should be driving you to your stepping stones. So I agree with you. If you put a timeline, you might achieve it realistically, or you might fail. But if you don't put a timeline, you open up a world of possibilities, because then you can bring things forward a lot quicker, because you look for opportunities. You look for things like, how else can I do this differently? It's not happening fast enough because I don't feel it's happening fast enough. But I think you have to be in tune with who you are. You have to be very comfortable with the direction you're going, and almost
who you want to be.
Who you want to be. But that's where it's like, it has to really resonate with you. Because if your future goal doesn't resonate with you, you're going to need more performance goals and smart goals and things like that, because you're going to need to know that you've got this progress being made, because you don't have faith in that ultimate goal. But I also think there's a combination that is needed, and it's different for everyone. Because I know that you do like to know, if we're going on holiday next year, we need to make sure we're earning X amount of money to be able to afford that.
Yeah.
So you actually, if you've got timelines and events that you want to do, you have to bring in your time, but it should never be on the ultimate goal. So I agree with you completely in that. It just takes a bit of context.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we actually had someone ask the other day, they said, how do you go about setting goals if you're so scared of failing them? And because he said, and I'll ask you before I gave the answer I gave. So like he said to me, he said, how do you go about setting a goal if you're scared to set a goal because you don't ever achieve them? Or you're afraid you're going to fail at them.
And I think what I've learned, because that's definitely me, that was me 2 years ago when I hadn't really explored and played around with this. I would never set a goal that I didn't think I could achieve because I was too afraid of missing it. I got so obsessed with I have to hit the goal, otherwise what's the point in setting the goal? But I think you miss a big benefit of goal setting if you think like that. I've heard some of like really successful people that I follow talk about how they almost never hit their goal because they set their goals really big, and it's about what they're working towards, the direction that they're going, more than hitting that goal. Because the moment you hit that goal, that is such a short moment in time that will dissipate and you'll move on. And if you're always chasing that moment in time that you hit that goal, you're never going to be living in the present. So it's about having that bigger goal, so you're working towards something, but enjoying the journey you're on, and not being afraid of not hitting the goal.
And I think one element we haven't touched on is, and you'll hopefully get this if I lead you into it, is if you are certain on what you do want, what are you much more likely to realize?
What you don't want.
Yeah. And I think that's probably more key for if you currently have a goal, but you realize you're doing a lot of things that shouldn't be aligned with it. Like, be more strict on yourself, be more sure about yourself to say no to things, even when those things may seem good in the short term. Because if you know that it doesn't serve you long term, you are then taking yourself one step further away from where you want to be rather than one step closer.
So here's like a practical example. Say you want to make £1 million a year and you only want to be working 10 hours a week. If you start to build a business that requires like a 40-hour week commitment, and there's no way, it's not like you can ever plug in a staff member, like that is the commitment, and you're never gonna, and say as part of that dream you want to make $1 million a year, work 10 hours a week and be able to take 2 months off a year, but you are building something that does not allow that, you will then, that goal may seem crazy and unachievable, but the decisions you're going to make today are going to be impacted by that goal, because you're not going to commit to something that's not going to move you towards that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, I was pondering, when you're trying to move towards that, it doesn't mean, when Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, when you say having that big goal, it doesn't mean don't have lots of little goals. Doesn't mean don't have lots of little steps.
Yes.
I think what is important, again, it's going to come back to how you feel about them. Because I was taking a different route. Like, if you're listening to this and you're not trying to make £1 million and you're not resonating, then let's do something more simple, like losing weight. Mm-hmm. If you know that you want to lose 10 kgs and you give yourself 3 months, what usually happens? You either achieve it, crash diet, go back to how you were before, because that didn't have that, long term, I'm going to lose weight and remain like that. This is a
great example.
Yeah. So what you want to do is you have your 10 kgs, and that's a performance goal. But your ultimate goal is going to be like, think about how you're going to look when you're 60. Think about how you look when you're 90 or when you're 50 and much further along. And know that in order to look there, what are you going to have to start doing now? So that's when you start to break it into these small steps. Like, I have to start waking up earlier. I have to stop eating sugar. So you start to realize what are the little things. And if
sorry, how you actually,
one more. Sorry, I just want to say one more. If you're having to put timelines in place because that is, I have to put times in place, otherwise I don't achieve them. It's not the fact that timelines are necessary. It's that you perhaps don't have that desire that you think you do for that goal you're going towards. So work on your desire, how much that resonates. Because maybe you think you want that. Maybe you think you want to be a millionaire. Maybe you think you want to lose weight. But if you don't really want to, then don't do it, because you're just lying to yourself. Or really think about why you want to be that. Why is that important to you? Because when you start to have something that really resonates, time doesn't matter. You will wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, straight away. So it's the same like alcoholics. You get alcoholics that will perhaps they really want to quit because they realize how it's affecting, but deep down inside, there's something in them that hasn't really quite resonated. So you'll keep going back in that loop. Whereas you also get alcoholics that just say, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because they something in them resonated that it was no longer part of who they were. And they're able to stop and never look back. So, and the reason I'm pointing out is it's in all of us. We just have to dig deeper if we constantly find ourselves failing on our goals.
To find those goals. It's not necessarily
Steps,
about
yeah.
finding the desire, because you may never truly have the desire for it. It's not you may dig deeper and find it's not there. So then actually find the goals that you do have that deep desire for. I would love to go back to that weight loss example.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think it's really good, because it kind of clears up, I think really highlights the importance of having both those short-term, smart, achievable stretch goals. They stretch you, but they feel like you could be achieved, and those bigger visions. So you talk about what your body looks like. So let's say you're wanting to lose weight, you're wanting to lose 10 kgs in the next 3 months. If that's your only goal you have, you probably going to hit it, but the strategies you take to get there are going to be very different to someone who wants to also lose 10 kgs in 3 months, but they have a vision for what their body looks like in 10 years time. And I just think on like my weight loss journey, after just not paying my body much attention for like 5 or 6 years, having 4 kids, and doing, like, we've always been relatively healthy. My body's nowhere near what I would call like a bikini body, where I would whack on a bikini and happily, strut down the beach. And we've spoken about this in previous episodes. I have a bigger vision of like a 5-year vision of like being so super confident in a bikini. So when I then think about, I don't really focus on weight. I haven't weighed myself in like 2 years, but if I focus on how I want to feel in my body this next summer and how I want to feel in my clothes, and I know that I maybe need to just tone up a bit or lose a bit of weight. I don't know how much weight that is, but let's just, that's my 3-month goal. I am going to behave very differently in terms of how I lose that weight when I know there's a bigger 5-year vision that I'm heading towards. And I just think it does generally keep your ship sailing in the right direction, as opposed to, say your ship is sailing, you're not just going to jump to the closest island if you know your destination, your long-term destination is actually in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
You're going to be a lot smarter about where you navigate that ship to.
Yeah. You need to steer your own ship to the islands that serve you.
Yes.
And stay away from the whirlpools.
Don's got a big grin on his face. He loves the visual. Hey?
Yeah, because if there's whirlpools that are in the way, they're going to suck you away from where you want to be and then keep you in that loop.
So I think to answer that question then of one of our clients that asked, how should you set goals? I think you need almost like 2 broad categories of goals: a short-term smart goals,
yes,
and then the longer-term vision.
So if you're watching and if you're listening, I'm putting my right hand out as if it's representing long-term, which we're going to call ultimate goal. And then I'm going to put my left hand in front of me and then put it in lots of different places, because that's your performance goals. So it's now what I've seen is like it's a combination of what Ray used to think like, which is your short-term performance goals, and my long-term thinking goals, because it's like having mindset, like this mindset to be able to do, but with no strategy. So you need to be able to have the strategy to create that outcome. If you think about the high performance triangle and stuff like that, is you have to have it. It's not one or the other, which people always argue for. It's both in context to produce a product, which is what we want, an outcome or a skill. And I think what is really important, if you're listening to this far and because it intrigues you, try and make sure that whatever goal it is you set is set around who you're going to become. Because if it's driving a Lamborghini, you don't want to be a Lamborghini driver that's overweight, unhealthy, super unfriendly, and has no friends. Because that's what you will get. If you go, I want £1 million, or I want a Lamborghini, or I want a big house, you're going to get what you asked for, but you're not going to get in the way that you were specified. And actually, at the end of the day, like all of the patterns, all of the things that we see, like all of that is going to mean nothing if you're alone, or if you're a horrible individual and you don't like yourself, because that money is not going to bring you what it is. But if you are going, I want to be a Lamborghini driver that earns £1 million, that has great friends, that is super healthy, is super happy, so I know what I can start to do is work on me, then the rest starts to work itself out. And you're very specific about where you want to be. That's where I talk about, like, it's got to resonate with you, and it's got to be quite specific so that you know what you don't want to do. Because if you driving a Lamborghini in 10 years' time is you with your shirt off at Miami Beach with a six-pack, stop drinking, stop eating sugar, stop doing all those things, focus on, and that's going to take time to like get in place. But you will know when you're doing it that you shouldn't be, and that's the whole point: is you raising your awareness of the things that don't serve you. Just my 2 cents.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
And yeah, I think, is there anything else you wanted? Because I think we've covered quite a good array and given hopefully good context around goal setting. Are there any other points or examples or things that you would want to bring in at this stage?
No, I think if there's just one thing I recommend doing, if I know you hear people who say I don't set goals. People who are anti-goals.
Yeah, I'm generally anti-goals. I have
you?
one big goal, and then then I've learned those smaller goals with you. So if you're anti-goals, just to come in there, is like, I can almost guarantee you that deep within yourself, and you know it, but you haven't thought about it, you've got a bigger thing that you want to achieve, but you haven't defined that. But you know where you're going. It could be like a vague picture of who you want to be. It could be a vague direction of where you want to get to. It's within you. You just haven't acknowledged it. But something's driving you. Otherwise, you would be doing nothing with your life. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You'd probably just be sitting watching TV every single day of your life and doing nothing.
And so talking about then actually, like Don says, try and get yourself to sit and write down goals if you haven't done it before. And so as you've got through this process of actually writing down, recording what goals you wanted to achieve, how you've achieved those, and actually recording your progress over time, how have you enjoyed seeing that map out over the last couple of years now that we can look back?
No, it's still interesting. I still think that with the way I think and the way you think, like, I still struggle to set a very clear goal, but I know what it feels like in me. So, but the more times I do the exercises, the clearer, then the more I'm like, oh yes, I want that. Oh yes, I want that. So it's not just, I don't think it's a one-off, I've set that goal, that's exactly where I'm going to be. I think that you can have a bigger picture and then you just detail it as you go. Because when you detail it, you start to realize what you also want in that. And when I look back at some of our goals now, I know that there's some that we haven't hit. There's some that we are, and I'm like, oh, we achieved that. Didn't even realize it.
And I think it's important to celebrate that.
Yeah, and that's where the importance of your performance goals or the strategy comes in, is because it allows much clearer reflection and stops your ego from lying to you, saying you're not good enough. Because we've got we track them in the greens, the oranges, and the
yes, we do like that.
And so when you see the greens, you're like, oh, we have actually done that. Oh, that's awesome. Exciting. That's really. So then the more greens you have,
because we use a traffic light system on one of our our life scorecards on how we're achieving our goals for the year, and it's really great as you see those fill out and become green, because they were just an idea in our minds at the start of the year.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. Something that I have been thinking about while we've been talking about goal setting is how actually. This might be, I don't want to say I don't want to say dirty word, but a word that you maybe avoid. But goal setting, in all intents and purposes, is a form of manifestation.
Dirty word.
A word that you might be like, oh, that's too fluffy for me. But why I wanted to talk about it is because a lot of, lessons we learn, a lot of like the things that are really helpful in goal setting are actually the exact same for manifesting. And manifesting is, at the end of the day, is picturing what you want in your life and making it happen. That's manifestation. Mm-hmm. So what made me really want to talk about it, because I had thought about it a couple of times while we've been chatting, is I think there's a really useful lesson that I've learned as part of manifesting that I think can also help you in goal setting, is that you spoke about what you've really struggled with, Don, and I imagine there's other people, is that you can't get really specific about writing down or defining maybe in monetary terms or actually writing down what a goal is, but it's a feeling. And so when you come to manifest or goal set, some people are able to get really specific, but some people are non-specific goal setters or non-specific manifestors, and they more do it based on a feeling. And so if you're that way inclined, a really useful way to help you with your goal setting and think what I want to achieve is actually to maybe get some images. So like look online about like what would be your dream house, what would be your dream body, what would be like, do you want to be debt free? So get some visual that reminds you of having no loans, no debt. Do you want to have amazing holidays? Whatever that is, create a bit of a vision board for your goal setting. If writing it down doesn't kind of resonate with you, create some visuals. Even if you can print it out, or you could just go on. What I've done before is go on a computer, open up a Word document, and go onto Google and literally Google some images, or you could use an AI generator. Now there's AI, and
good,
generate some visuals of what your goals look like, and then copy and paste those images into a Word document, and then just look at that Word document and really lean into those feelings. And are those visuals creating those really good like feelings that really get you buzzing? And then just do that every few months, and that can be a form of goal setting. It doesn't have to be something that is numbers on a page. It can just be visuals that you are aiming for, a feeling.
So I've got, if you saw my vision board on Xmind, it's pictures. There are some words, but there's very few numbers. There's only one specific number. But the pictures like that represent health is like a Nova Thor red light therapy thing, and an ice bath, and a sauna.
Yes.
Because I know that I want those in wherever I am at. There's a couple of other pictures of like a home gym that I've taken off Pinterest, because I want activity. I want those kinds of things that represent where I want to be in the future.
And they create a feeling.
Yeah.
And I think visuals, pictures can even be used. They can be used for both that bigger long-term goal, but they can also be used for those shorter-term stepping stones. And actually pictures very much, if you look at the definition of smart, they meet that in a lot of ways, because that picture represents all of those things.
Yeah.
So don't feel, there's so many ways that you can set goals. But I think the key is just to sit down, apply your mind, and document it somewhere that is what you're aiming for, so that you can look back. It doesn't have to be anything too formal. So if you could even just have a notebook where you cut out pictures from a magazine and stick it in there. But it's having that snapshot of what you wanted to achieve at a point in time that you can look back on. That will help you to visualize where you want to go, so at this point in time you know you're heading in a certain direction, and then in a year or two look back on and see what you've actually achieved. I think that the power lies in that. And that was, and
be excited for who you'll become when you start to really try and go after the goals that you want to achieve. I think that's, for me, is like, you can go through life not being a goal setter or being a very specific goal setter, and you'll achieve things and it'll be great. You won't recognize them. You won't have that reflection sometimes. You'll just be like, yeah, that's amazing. Like, life just works.
Yeah.
But when you start to set goals, they start to become so much more satisfying because you can recognize progress. You can recognize, who you're becoming. You can recognize failures. Like, that's how you learn, is through hardship. So you actually want to fail, because you're not going to grow if you don't fail. And if you're not failing, then you're not trying to set your goals big enough. I know it sounds cliche, but it really, like, once you get it, you get it. And so you start to seek into failure. And even now I'm like, oh, do I really like failure? And you look back at some of the stuff that we've done in the last 2 years, like, it's actually phenomenal. Even though it may not be screaming like might not be like a Gymshark level yet, but there's a lot of things within our life that we probably would never speak about in the podcast, more because it's around the kids and how what we've achieved here, and some of the stuff we've done in the house, and even the actions we've taken to build things out around us with everything going on. It's because we had goals, and I think the next level is aligning your goal with someone else. So if you have a partner, like, if you align them, you've got an accountability buddy right there.
And it is quite exciting when I think about our journey, and how this time last year we had like ideas or goals of things like we wanted to be able to do, like having time to exercise regularly and do the 3 Peaks challenge, and have time to meditate and have time for ourselves. And we were sitting in the middle of absolutely crazy busy lives, trying to barely keep our heads above water in terms of everything that needed to be done. And we were saying, well, we want to make sure we have time for ourselves. We had no idea how that was going to happen, but we knew it was something that was really important to us. And what that enabled us to do is to look for an idea or an opportunity or something completely out the box that wasn't even on our spectrum of thinking, to come into our lives, and we've been able to then make adaptations this year with that have enabled us to achieve those things that we didn't think were possible.
Yeah.
Because we set that intention,
but
goal.
It's also not been easy. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't, like, it's not to say that this route gets easy. Like there's been times where like I've wanted to stop. Ray's gone, no, come on, let's go. And there's been times where Ray's like, what are we doing this for? And I'm like, no, come on, it's fine, let's keep going. Because you're allowed to feel bad. You're allowed to feel like you're failing. You're allowed to feel like, you're allowed to question yourself, because that's where you start to learn. That's where you start to really tap into, is this what I want? And you will find out what you do want. So like, don't be scared if you fail. It's just an ego thing, and it's going to get in your way. Ego you need, but ego you also need to recognize when you need it at the right time. So yeah I think,
that's a good place to end, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Ray, thank you very much for your lovely insight. It was wonderful to do this again with you.
Thank you for having me as a co-host, Don.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And we appreciate all of you guys for listening. We've picked up a couple of new followers. We've had some fantastic episodes that we need to do a reflection episode, I think, just to reflect on the guests that we've had and just talk about some of the things that like new listeners may have missed. Perhaps I'll write that down for next time, so we do actually plan something. But until then, you guys that are listening and watching, you guys are top class individuals. You're top class humans because you're listening. And we know that you only listen because you want to learn something, and you want to learn something because you want to make a difference for you and for those around you. And we will make sure that we're bringing that difference to you. Whether this episode resonated or the next one, keep tuning, keep following the journey. If you want to go right back to where we first started, I said, follow the journey now, because it's going to get so satisfying when we get to the top and you know that what that journey's looked like. Because it's not my first rodeo at trying something and moving on and being committed. So it's like we're just learning this time. We're being very authentically open and failing and showing you guys, what's happening now. This is our life, because we really want you to buy into the journey and see what it takes to get there, instead of just being at the end and going, yeah, you can do it too. And then people dive headfirst into brick walls, not realizing they had to break it down or climb over. So you were going to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say we are actually really excited about a special podcast series that we're going to be releasing in December called the 12 Days of Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the planning stages of that now. And that will be released probably starting 20th or 25th of
And what's
December.
that going to be, Ray?
What's it going to be? 12 days in a row of a podcast being released every day, sharing our top tips and thoughts on how to have an absolutely incredible 2025.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
You know this, though.
Okay, cool. Well, on that note, we're going to say goodbye. Remember, I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. Ubuntu, we are who we are through others.
Thank you.